Welcome to the Holy Land and this biblical site of Nazareth. A lot of interesting things took place right here in Nazareth. Among the most important, as you probably know, this is where Jesus grew up. This is his hometown. And you can look out over here. It's very different than it was in the time of Jesus, but this was Jesus' hometown. This is where he grew up in. Nazareth is located in the northern part of Israel and is about 35 miles west of the Sea of Galilee. Nazareth is estimated to have had a population during the time of Christ of around 300 to 500 people. Nazareth was the hometown of Joseph and Mary and the place where the angel Gabriel was sent to announce to the Virgin Mary that she would be the mother of Christ, the Son of God, the Messiah. After living in Egypt for some time after Christ's birth, his parents returned to Nazareth, where Jesus grew up. Jesus lived in Nazareth until he started his earthly ministry at the age of 30. From Nazareth, Christ relocated and set up his ministry home base in Capernaum. Matthew 4:13 says, "And leaving Nazareth, he came and settled in Capernaum, which is by the sea, in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali." There is a place in Nazareth that has been preserved to show what life was like during the time of Christ. It's called Nazareth Village and has native Israelis who dress up like the people did in Nazareth around 2,000 years ago. It's located in the heart of Nazareth, so there's no doubt that Christ would have traversed this location frequently. You can see what the buildings would have been like where Christ grew up and lived. You can also see a carpenter's workshop that would have been similar to that in which Christ worked with Joseph, his earthly father, and then continued working to meet his family's needs after Joseph died. Mary's well is located close by to the spring, which was the water supply for Nazareth during Christ's day. Just up from Mary's well is St. Gabriel Greek Orthodox Church, which is built over this spring and is also the believed place where the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary with the news that she would be the birth mother of Christ. As already mentioned, the church called the Basilica of the Annunciation, which is down below Mary's well and the Greek Orthodox Church, is also the believed place where the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary. So in summary, there are two holy sites where it's believed the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary. One is the Church of the Basilica, built over Mary's home, and the other is St. Gabriel Greek Orthodox Church, built over the spring in Nazareth. We're not certain which site it is because the Bible doesn't give us the specifics. Being the oldest son, Jesus would have went to these places, to the spring and to Mary's well, on a regular basis to get water for his family's home. Jesus lived in Nazareth for almost 30 years until he started his earthly ministry and went to Capernaum to set up his ministry base. So I'm certain Christ would have literally walked on virtually every square foot of this once small town of Nazareth. So imagine Jesus as a little boy playing in these areas, growing up, working here, building with his earthly father Joseph, as a teenager, as a young adult. Jesus grew up here in Nazareth, and this was his hometown where he worked, he played, he ate, he slept, and he grew up until it was his time to start his earthly ministry at the age of 30. Here's the synagogue where Jesus would have attended on a regular basis as a child growing up and as an adult, and where he would later be rejected and led to be cast off of a close-by cliff and killed by his own townspeople. Today it's called the Synagogue Church, and is located right by St. Gabriel's Greek Orthodox Church. It's a 12th century church built by the Crusaders. According to tradition, the church was built above the original location of the Roman period synagogue where Jesus first learned, prayed, and later preached as a young man. The amount of time Jesus would have spent here was immeasurable. Because Nazareth was such a small town during Christ's time, everyone knew each other like family. But then on an occasion, Jesus came back to his hometown, and he came back to minister to them, but a tragic thing unfolds, and let's look at it and see what happens. In Luke 4, it says, "And Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread through all the surrounding district. And he began teaching in their synagogues and was praised by all. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as was his custom, he entered the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read. And the book of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him, and he opened the book and found the place where it was written, 'The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord.'" Afterward, he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Christ then went on to rebuke his townspeople for their rejection of him. And continuing on in verse 28, it says, "And all the people in the synagogue were filled with rage as they heard these things. And they got up and drove him out of the city and led him to the brow of a hill on which their city had been built, in order to throw him down the cliff. But passing through their midst, he went on his way." Now, why do you think they became so mad at Christ that they would do such a thing? Well, in their eyes, Jesus was just a normal human being. For Christ to declare himself the Messiah and the Son of God was to them blasphemy. So, what about us? Let's conclude the video. What about us? Nazareth had a bad reputation. For some reason we don't know, and that's where God chose to place Jesus. And you can see by the reason that they were going to throw Jesus off headlong and they got all mad, that's an evidence that they had a bad reputation, so it's very obvious. But oftentimes God places the greatest light in the darkness. So it might be for us that we look around and we're grieved by all the darkness, all the sin around us as sin is growing worse and worse, and wrong is flourishing, evil is flourishing. But God will place us in the darkness so that we can be his witnesses to share the light. And that's what God did by placing Jesus right here. Another lesson we can learn is that Jesus also was rejected by many, so he understands us when we're rejected by our closest friends and family members because of our faith in him. Jesus was rejected by his townspeople, rejected by the Jews, and rejected to such a degree that he was condemned to crucifixion, and he is rejected also by most people today. Isaiah 53:3 says, "He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not." So Christ understands when we are rejected because of our beliefs and commitments to him. And the people here largely rejected Christ. Hopefully, that's not us. Hopefully, we're not rejecting Christ. Hopefully, we're not rejecting his word. Hopefully, we're not negligent of him. Hopefully, we're not slothful in obeying him. Hopefully, we're not disobedient to him. And then hopefully we're not rejecting Christ's offer of salvation to us. So Christ came to offer salvation to Nazareth. They rejected him. Hopefully we wouldn't do the same. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and God bless.